In the history of home gaming consoles, one company came into left field with a console that took the world by storm in the 90s, and that company was Sony with the PlayStation. In this episode of Retro Docs, we're going to be talking about the Sony Playstation, or known today as the PSX, the very first of Sony's long-lasting consoles. The PlayStation began as an idea by Ken Kutaragi, a Sony executive who merged one of Sony's hardware divisions, and he soon got the idea to get into the console game after watching his daughter play games on his Nintendo Famicom. However, the real idea for the PlayStation goes way back to 1988 when Sony and Nintendo joined together. You see, Nintendo had already come up with a disc system with the Famicom and wanted to try to carry that over to their next new console, the Super Nintendo. Kutaragi had the idea to demonstrate his new concept, the SPC700 sound processor, to Nintendo for use in the Super Nintendo, and after watching the demo, Nintendo was impressed. However, this almost cost Kutaragi his job when Sony realized he was working with Nintendo on the side. But Noroi Ohaga saw potential in Kutaragi and kept him on as a protege, and knowing that Sony was still contracted by Nintendo to come up with a disc-based add-on for the SNES called the PlayStation or SNES CD, and soon the contract was signed and work began to start. With the failure of the SMSX computer system, Sony wanted to get their hands in the home video game console market. Even though they still had the agreement with Nintendo to create a CD-ROM add-on, they also wanted to create an SNES-compatible console as well, but this one would play both SNES games and a new media at the time called Super Discs. That Sony was going to design and retain sole international rights to every Super Disc sold, thus giving them a massive control of the market, even though Nintendo was still controlling the majority of the market, and Sony would be the only one to benefit from any music and film media they were going after as a secondary application for the console. Sony's console, called the PlayStation, was to be announced at the 1991 Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas. Nintendo, weary of what was about to happen, decided to release Sony from the contract they had and given Sony total control over any title that were made for the SNES CD, and then Nintendo secretly canceled the joint venture they had with Sony and went with Philips, Sony's direct competitor. Now incensed by Nintendo's announcement, Ohaga and Kutaragi decided it was now time for Sony to finally get their hands in the market by developing their own console. Sony had made a proposal to Sega to join with them, however it was promptly vetoed by Sega, stating that Sony had no clue on how to make hardware or software, and why would they even want to do that? This caused Sony to stop their current development and took what they had learned from both Nintendo and Sega and used it to create a console based on the SNES. However, Sony still had a small agreement with Nintendo to develop a port on the PlayStation that would play SNES games, but Nintendo wanted all profits from console and games sold while using Kitaragi's audio chip. This deal caused many within Sony to question the direction that Kutaragi was taking the company, and others feared it was pulling the company in jeopardy. However, Kutaragi was still adamant that it was a good idea, and also felt that the deal with Nintendo was a bad one. So on May 4th, 1992, Sony ended any involvement they had with Nintendo. Ora then decided to hold a meeting the following month with Kutaragi and members of the board, where Kutaragi unveils a new CD-ROM he had been secretly working on that would play games with immersive 3D graphics and far exceeded the capabilities of Sony's semiconductor division. Despite the enthusiasm Ora had, there were still some within the company that had their doubts at the meeting, and the old guard was also still against the idea, as well as stating that they felt Sega and Nintendo were just toy manufacturers, and that the video game industry was a bit offbeat for Sony, and that they should just stick to making audio-visual products. At the start, Sony had one major issue they had to deal with, and that was they had no clue on game development, so they had to rely on third-party game developers to help them out, as well as getting endorsements from arcade-savvy developers as well. So a handful of third-party developers such as Namco, Konami, and Williams Entertainment, along with 250 other developers, soon joined in to help Sony create the PlayStation. Namco was a big one since they wanted to compete with their biggest competitor Sega, and their console, the Saturn. Sony still had another major issue that they had to work out, and that they had no in-home developer to help create games. But that soon changed in 1993 when Sony bought Prognosis for $48 million, and they became Sony's first in-house game developer. However, it was a controversial move by Sony, but it meant that they could now boost their library of launch titles for the PlayStation in time for the Europe and North American release. Sony strived to make sure game development was streamlined and inclusive, which contrasted with the rivals Sega and Nintendo, and soon developers were starting to come around to making games for the PlayStation due to the console's CD-ROM implementation. Unlike the 3DO by Philips, which had a data replay system, the PlayStation had an image generation system, which meant that it could quickly generate and synthesize data from the CD. The PlayStation's Japanese launch was a week after Sega had launched the Saturn, and had a price of 39,800 yen, which converts to about $362.83 in US dollars. And it dominated the Japanese market, with people lined up to get their hands on the console, and selling 100 million units the first day and 2 million units after the first 6 months on the market. Before the US launch, Sony had decided to present the PlayStation at the first electronic entertainment show in LA on May 11th, 1995. And here, if you remember, is when Sega had announced the Saturn was going to have a price of a hefty $399. Immediately after was Sony's turn, when they had head of Sony Computer of America, Olaf Olsson, called up Steve Rice, the head of development at Sony, and they one-upped their game by announcing that the PlayStation would sell at a price of $299, a $100 difference between the two consoles. And as the two of them left the stage, the audience gave them a massive round of applause. Sega's massive mistake of doing a surprise launch for the Saturn became Sony's opportunity to gain traction, as many retailers didn't like that Sega did that. And certain retailers like KB Toys just up and dropped Sega altogether and went with Sony instead. And soon the PlayStation was released on September 9th, 1995, at the undercut price of $299. And Sony had outsold Sega in the first 5 months, with 100 million units being sold in advance, and 17 more games to be released than Saturn 6 at launch. Sony soon started to gain a foothold in the market due to the successful marketing strategy and marketing it towards teenagers and adults, which the thought being that most younger gamers would look up to older ones, which would draw more people to buy it, and the adults regressed to 17 when playing video games, and soon they had their first ad, which gave us the slogan, "Live in your world, play in ours. You are not E." In 1996, Sony had started to expand their CD production facility in the US due to high demand for games that had increased from 4 million discs to 6.5 million. And it was important as sales for the PlayStation had run twice that of Saturn, and Sony's lead that increased when both Sega and Sony had dropped the price of their consoles to $199. The reception for the PlayStation was outstanding, with Famicom Tushin scoring the PlayStation a 19 out of 40, which was less than Saturn got, but the reception in the States was even better, with Next Generation going on to saying that the CPU was fairly average, but they loved the 3D capabilities and how comfortable the controllers were, and the ease of use of the memory card as well, going on to giving the system a 4 out of 5. By 1997, 5 Electronic Gaming Monthly editors rated the system a 9.5, a 8.5, a 9.0, and a 9.0, and a 9.5, which was the highest score they'd ever given any console at the time. Sony was an upstart company in the video game market in the late 1994, competing with two juggernauts, Sega and Nintendo. By the late 1990s, Sony had become a regarded brand with the PlayStation, giving them a lead, which put Nintendo second and trailing third in place with Sega. The PlayStation was the first console to sell over 100 million units worldwide, and soon they followed up with success with the PlayStation 2, which had a DualShock controllers and backwards compatibility. Basically what that means is it could play both PlayStation and PlayStation 2 games. The PlayStation 2 soon took the lead over the Sega Dreamcast and the Nintendo GameCube, and also Microsoft's entrance into the gaming world, the Xbox. And now Sony has a total of 5 PlayStation consoles under their belt, as well as the PS Portable, a portable PlayStation, and the PS Vita, which was also portable. Now I can say that personally I know the system very well, as I actually had one as a teenager and a young adult. And as of writing this, I do remember owning a PS2 that was the first console I actually bought on my own, as well as many of the games I had for it. However, as time went on, I soon ended up with an Xbox, and then a Nintendo Wii, as well. But currently, as of writing the script, I have a PS4, a PS Mini, which is nothing more than the copycat of like the Nintendo Mini, a PS1 of which I can't figure out how to get to work, and a PS3 as well. I have and will always love the PlayStation. However, I'm not sure if I want to get the PS5 right now, as I usually want to wait for the price to go down. I know it keeps me a bit behind in the times of gaming, but still, I will continue to love the brand as time goes on. If you had any of these PlayStation consoles, let me know in the comments down below. I'm Paul saying peace out and stay frosty. Hey, I'm glad you made it to the end. Thanks for watching, and I just want to say a couple things before we finish this video off. Just to let you know, I do have Patreon, and the Patreon helps support the channel in any way possible and I do have a Teespring shop as well with some great quality merch that you can buy as well. Links for both will be in the description. And again, thanks for watching, and peace out and stay frosty.